What's up? What's up? What's up? Hey tribe, how you guys doing? Come on
Hola.
in, hit that like button as you come in. I told you guys that today we were gonna have a special treat. We are going to be breaking down a documentary that is over on Peacock called The Rebellious Life of Miss Rosa Parks. And I have my girl here with me, Peace, Love, and Netflix. Y'all probably know her as the artist formerly known as Peace Love.
Hey girl. How
What's
are
up? What's up?
you?
What's up?
Nothing much. Nothing much.
So thank you for being here. I called you um a while back and I was like, please, please, and please, can you do this with me? Because tell everybody about your channel and then they'll understand. I mean, other than you my homie, but then they'll understand why I reached out to you. So tell everybody what you do over there on your channel.
Well, my channel is exactly what's in the name. So it's about peace, love, and Netflix. So it's all about self-love, self-care, how to attract peace into your life. And then every Wednesday we discuss Netflix. That's just where I am in this season in life. I'm all about attracting love and creating an environment of peace. And then I love reviewing documentaries. That is my number one drama, but we also review other movies that are on Netflix. I believe the next one we're going to review on Wednesday of next week is You People with Eddie Murphy and what is that girl who just got I cheated on you?
Nia Long
Nia
and
Long.
Laura.
I'm so sorry to put her in. But yes,
Yeah.
the great Nia Long. So we'll be reviewing that next Wednesday at 9. Yep.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I've heard mixed reviews about it, and I'm gonna have to definitely check it out. The clips look funny. But we'll check it out. We'll check it out.
It's the
All
new
right, so you
version.
guys, if y'all,
It's
it's
the new
basically a
version of
new
Guess
version.
Who's Coming to Dinner. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. It's basically Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah.
Um, what's up, L Nixon? How you doing? How you doing?
Hey,
So let me say hi to the people that are coming in the room. I just spoke to L Nixon. Below, what's going on? She said she's gonna be listening from the bushes. Appreciate you, my love. Hey, D'Souza. Hey, Melly. L Love. What's going on? What's going on? Lovely 31. Hey, Tracy. What's up, my girl? Um, so I saw the okay, so let me start from the beginning. This is a book. So you guys, please, please, and please go check out the book. There's also, as you can see, there's a reader's edition. So if you have kids, you can definitely check out the reader's edition. So please, please, and please again, y'all go check out this documentary. Now, first of all, let me ask you, Peace, how did you feel about the documentary?
it was so eye-opening because I always just thought of Rosa Parks as this woman who did this one thing, which was gave up her seat on the bus, which was very courageous
Mm-hmm.
and very bold. But I didn't know the full stint of her activism. And I also didn't
Yes.
know that she had views that were pretty radical in her approach. It's not, she wasn't all about peacekeeping. So I thought that was very eye opening. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say some of this I knew, but there were definitely things that I did not know as well. Um, I knew. I'm gonna be honest. I probably knew up until I knew about her early work with the NAACP. I knew about um I knew about a lot of that stuff. I knew that the sit-in, I mean, I knew it had been planned, something that they had been planning. I knew a lot of things, but I did not. I'm like you. I did not know a lot of her activism post I'll say post 1968 ish, like going into the 1970s and stuff like that.
Right.
I did not know. But there were some things that I did not know. Even with her, her like her connection to Claudette Colvin. We'll get to that. I
Mm-hmm.
have a bunch of notes.
Okay, yeah, let's dive in.
I have a bunch of notes. The only thing I did not like about the documentary, I didn't
Mhm.
like the way they kept going back and forth of the years. It was confusing to keep my notes because it would be like 1919, 1968, 1920, 1974. And I was like, why are we doing
Yeah,
this?
do it in chronological order. What threw me
Right.
off in the very beginning, though, was when the first scene was shot for that gaming show in the 1960s. Remember?
Yes.
And they were like I forgot the name of the show. It was really big back then.
It's called what's oh shoot, see, I knew it until I said it. Because
Yeah.
they rebooted it. Anthony Anderson does it. Oh shoot. But it's basically the show where you have to guess who a person is. They give you clues and then you guess who the person is. What was it called? If y'all know in the chat, y'all tell me what it was called.
You have to guess. So the show is about guessing who the person is. So it's a famous, not really a famous or interesting person. Right. And somebody who, I guess who has done or performed something, and you're supposed to guess who they are. It could be anyone from scientist to entertainer. It could be anything. Is it Tell the Truth?
Thank you, Tracy, to tell the truth.
That really threw me off in the beginning because the contestants really did not know which one that was sitting there was Rosa Parks. It was two other Black women, and it was Rosa Parks sitting there. And of course, the host is like, "Oh yeah, I was the one who, didn't give up my seat on the bus." And I'm like, "Y'all don't know what Rosa Parks looks like,"
Right? And you would think, like, I would expect kids of this generation or people of this generation maybe not to know, but you would think back then when it was so much of a newer situation that people would
right. And they guessed wrong. They guessed wrong.
Yeah, like I think only one person guessed right. Only one person up there guessed right. Hey, Nay, but everybody else guessed wrong, and then Al Green was there and he recused himself because he was like, I know her. Like I know who she is. I gotta kind of recuse myself.
But I think it goes back to what Elle is saying. She was minimized in the past. I think that she started to become, what is the word? Not infamous, but, recognized and, cemented herself.
Right.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it, I think, is sexism because one thing that's hard for us as people to do is call a thing when we want to romanticize something and we don't want to take away from something. But the reality of the situation is the civil rights movement was dominated by men who thought that they knew everything and they had all of the answers. They didn't want to hear from women. They were cool with women running everything because let's be clear, the backbone of the civil rights movement was Black women. But they wanted to be at the forefront. And what I thought was I'm going out of sequence here, but what I did think was shocking, and I did not know this, was not one civil rights organization offered her a job at any point in time.
I was shocked. Yeah, she was
I did not know.
Yeah, she was poor and destitute for some time.
Exactly, very destitute. I knew she had to leave the South because of threats. I knew that she had lost her job and that her husband had lost his job and that they could not find work. I knew all of that. And I knew that's why she ended up relocating to Detroit. But what I didn't know was that they didn't even try to help her. They didn't try to give her a job. They didn't try to see if that her husband were okay. And I did not know. But I think a lot of times we, especially when we look back on the past, we want to romanticize everything and they could do no wrong. And these men were, it was still a very sexist society, whether it was white men or Black men. It was still a very sexist society. So I thought that was.
I have to also point out, she wasn't like, not to put activists against each other, but she didn't have that air kind of like an Angela Davis, who's very bold and very, forward and very radical, She is more like, she looks like the docile, stay at home, wife. That's what, so maybe with a little bit of that too, just a tad.
Right.
But
exactly.
She really was bold and courageous. When you gave her the mic, she had something to say,
Oh yeah. And that's what I like. So the documentary, so that's where it started with the clip from To Tell the Truth. You're right, Elle Nixon. Emmett Till's demise did have a lot to do with her getting to a point, but we're also going to see in the documentary how it was a build up even to that point.
Right.
But Emmett Till's death had a lot to do with it as well. What I like is that they were actually reading her letters so that you hear her words throughout the documentary.
Yeah.
And we start off, and the first thing I wrote that they read from her letters was that she wrote, "I was never for integration." And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think a lot of people are fooled into thinking that all Black folk wanted integration. There were a lot of Black folk that did not want integration. They just wanted separate but equal. They were fine with separate. They just wanted it equal.
Listen,
They
I was
didn't want,
shocked by
they didn't
that.
want to go to the schools, or they liked the fact that we had our own little world. We just wanted it to be equal. We just wanted to be
Right.
treated in a certain manner. And so I thought that was the first thing that stood out to me. And those were her own words saying, "Listen, yeah, I was never for integration. Like that wasn't my thing."
Yeah, my eyes definitely popped open like, oh. And they came out the gate with that. Like, I was like, oh, she wasn't even pro integration. Yeah. And so there was this one moment, but I guess we'll get to that. But yeah, I was surprised by that. But then it does go back to, I wonder how many other civil rights activists felt the same way. They just wanted it to be equal if we are going to be separated. So
Exactly. And she also later on in the documentary, because I don't want to forget this point, later on in the documentary, they revealed that she wasn't necessarily nonviolent either.
mm-mm.
Of course, went against um the whole, Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian leadership. But let me tell you guys a little secret. Martin Luther King wasn't nonviolent either. He just knew that that's what they had to do. He knew that there was no way that they could be violent and get what they wanted, because at the end of the day, the white man always got more guns. So he wasn't necessarily nonviolent. And you hear people that knew him in real life, they were like, when you went up in Martin Luther King's house, you had to ask where you could sit because he had so many guns around his house, and he kept bodyguards. And I don't think people realize that. So he
Well, for
was
good reason. Because back then, you were enemy number one if you were, yeah, the head of any kind of civil rights movement or a civil
oh,
rights
absolutely.
activist. That, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the documentary goes back, it starts at 1919, and they tell us a story about how her family lost their land to the KKK. It sounded like it was very much a story, very similar to like a Black Wall Street kind of thing, where her family was pretty much terrorized. They had a farm, and they pretty much, they were pretty much put off of their own land by the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm-hmm.
She is the granddaughter of her slave owner. Her grandfather was
Mm-hmm.
her grandmother's slave owner.
Owner, yeah.
And of course, they had kids, and the land was left to them from the grandfather. So that's how they
Mm-hmm.
got the land. Um, she talked about how her father could pass. Her father really
Mm-hmm.
could have passed. I mean, we saw how fair and light skinned Rosa Parks was, but she said her father could have passed for white. Nobody would even questioned it, but he chose, but he didn't. And she talked about how she would stay up at night with her father with a weapon in her hand, on guard, because her grandfather, I mean her father would stay up at night to for the patrols of the Ku Klux Klan. And she
Right.
said
There
that
was,
even in her old age, she was never a good sleeper, but it came from staying up at night, being on guard, waiting for the Klan to come through.
right. So it even affected her up into her, her old age. But yeah, it sounded like she just grew up in an environment where you had to protect yourself with guns.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Slavery
the
in
men
Ohio.
around her. Hmm. Even the
Exactly.
men around her, those who would come visit the house, everybody was locked and loaded, because at any point you could be, brutally, or someone could, accost you, and you could be brutally attacked or something. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, she told the story about, her first sort of acts of defiance against, the white establishment was when there were some white kids that were picking on her brother.
Hmm.
And she talked about her chasing them off with a brick
Hmm.
and how afraid her mother was that there was going to be retribution, and that they were going to basically come and get her, come and lynch her, and how
Right.
afraid they were of that happening to her.
Right. So she always kind of like had this
Yeah,
rebellious spirit about her. Hmm.
exactly. It's funny because you see her and she's so soft spoken, but she just seemed like somebody I wouldn't want to tussle with.
Yeah, they said she was about 5'1" and like not even 100 pounds, barely.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
She went to the school. She was from a very rural community outside of Montgomery, and school only went up to 6th grade. And so her mom had the wherewithal to send her away to a private school in the city, where she could finish her education. So she went to 6th grade, and then she went to a private school, Mrs. White's. And she said that a lot of people that she ended up working with in the civil rights movement went to Miss White's. So that was sort of almost like a breeding ground, I guess.
Right. And she was able to pay for it by cleaning. That's why that's what she did. She was able to pay for the private school by cleaning. But that's where she also learned her strength, about her, her strength as a Black girl or Black woman out here in America, and that you can do it and things like that. It kind of reminds me of the HBCUs, and that's what you learn there as well before we go out into the corporate world. That's like the undercurrent, like you can do it. This is your place in this world. Recognize who you are in this world, and you can do it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Eventually, though, she didn't finish high school initially because her grandmother was sick, and then her grandfather, I think it was, got sick. So she eventually left school. She did go back and finish high school after she got married. She was able to go back and finish high school, but she did end up having to drop out. And she said that she wished she had always gone to college. She said maybe she had been a nurse or a social worker if she had been able to go to college.
Yeah, she didn't. I was surprised by that. They said a lot of people assumed that she was middle class. I assumed that too. But they said that she lived in the projects. She lived in the projects, and she never owned anything. She and her husband
never owned a home. So the day she died, never owned a home.
She presented herself so well, though, didn't she?
She did. She always was that proper. She always was that proper, hair was always proper, and she always, because she could sew so well, she always looked nice. Because her own clothes. They said that she could look at something. She didn't need a pattern or anything. She could look at something and boom, she could duplicate it.
She could recreate it. I thought that was amazing because every single clip, she was always together. Always buttoned up, always had her hair perfectly done. She would have some sort of fascinator on the side of her head or some hat. Yes. That little cardigan. I'm like, this woman is always dressed to the nines. Like, yeah.
That was the expected norm back then. And I whenever I look at these old clips of the civil rights movement, and I mean even the 1940s and stuff like that, you was the poorest of the poor of our people, but they always had on their Sunday best. They always made sure that even if they wore the same dress to church every Sunday, they wore that dress to church every Sunday. And
it was washed, ironed. It just looked crisp and clean.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's why a lot of churches had, especially in the Black churches, that's why a lot of Black churches enacted uniforms. So people wouldn't feel superior or inferior. Somebody could come in there every day, dressed, every Sunday with the newest on, and then somebody would feel less than. But if you were usher, you all the same. Everybody got on white.
Everybody white, yeah.
The different auxiliaries would have different uniforms. That was the idea. That's what I was told. I mean, if I'm wrong, y'all tell me I'm wrong in the chat. But that's what I was told.
I think that's a reflection of the pride and the dignity, like just to go out and always present yourself in your absolute best. Despite all the struggles that they were going through, they said even for the marches, or even when they had to do anything that was, activist related, they would go out there looking very put together, and they knew that they could encounter some sort of violence or some sort of brutality, but they would dress up every single time. And I was just like, man, we were some bad, bad people. Let me tell you. We were. So this whole documentary was it just made me even more prideful about who we are as a people. It disappointed me in some ways, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, yeah. So in 1931, she becomes active um, with the NAACP and with the Scottsboro Boys. And for those of
Mhm.
you who do not know the story of the Scottsboro Boys was a group. I think it was nine black young men because they were the youngest one was 12. They were on a train and there was an altercation on the train. There was something that happened on the train, and there were two white women. And as a way to deflect from the incident that happened on the train, they accused these boys of assaulting them, sexually assaulting them, and of course they were convicted, and all of them were sentenced to life in prison except for the 12-year-old. Um, and so she was very active on. There was a whole campaign to get them a fair trial, to get them out of jail, and all of that. And that is where she met her husband, Raymond Parks. They said they called him Parks. Everybody called him Parks, but that's where she met her husband. He was a barber. He was also light skinned, very fair skinned. Um, and throughout the documentary, it talks about how they were inseparable. Like they were to the end, they were inseparable. They were yin and yang. Um, so yeah, that's what that was.
Yeah, I thought that was beautiful. I did not even know she was married. I did
Oh, you
never
didn't
even.
know she was married? Okay.
Oh no, never. This is my first time meeting her husband. I didn't know she was married. And they were
Okay.
inseparable. And they even spoke to the fact that she was, well, now she's coined the mother of the civil rights movement, or but she, was the more visual person. And then he always kind of just took a back seat, and he was fine with that, and which is
Yeah.
not the norm back in those days, because usually, the men are the leaders and all that stuff. But he didn't have any problems with that. So I like Mr. Parks.
Yeah, and I found it interesting, maybe disheartening, that even when that okay, so you don't offer her a job, but the fact that they never even offered him a job, I was like, wow, like you ain't even gonna offer the husband a job either. So, but you're right, he was very the documentary said that he was very comfortable playing husband. Like he didn't need the spotlight. He didn't try to get
Mhm.
it. That I didn't hear any stories about him. I'm sure they might have had moments, but overall, no issues of insecurities from his part on that. He was very comfortable playing the back, to her.
Mhm.
Sharice, this is a no judgment zone. The reason why we do this over here is so we can learn. So no, girl, I'm not gonna judge you. Sharice says she always thought that Rosa Parks was a biracial woman. Was she? I'm coming in late. She was not biracial. However, her grandfather was a white man. He was a slave owner, and her grandmother was a slave, and that's how her father was born. So she was not biracial, but her grandfather was white. So, but no, this is a no judgment zone. Okay, that's
Absolutely
why we
not.
here. We all learning. Because listen, as much as I thought I knew, I still learned something as well. Okay, you can always learn things.
Right.
So this is where the documentary gets a little winky wonky to me, because then it jumped to 1971, and I was like, wait, what? It threw me off. I was like, wait, how we get to
Right.
1971? But it was very interesting because 1971, they talked about how she was very active with a Black revolutionary organization called the New Republic of Africa. And it was led by a man by the name of Richard Henry. He adopted an African name that I didn't write down because I knew I would remember Richard Henry. Okay. They were demanding reparations, very similar to a lot of the radical groups at that time. You had the Weathermen; they were like the white version. You had the Black Panthers, and so they were a very radical group. So of course, because they were radical, they were targeted by the police. They had weapons and things of that nature, and so their compound was raided by the police, and of course everybody that was there was arrested and they were convicted. Now Raymond, who wasn't even there the day the police came, because he was the leader, he was convicted as well. And they
Mhm.
said that Rosa Parks was very active in trying to get them out of jail, but um she called the jail after he was convicted. They said that she called the jail every week to check on him and make sure that that see how he was doing and see how he was and everything. And he accredited Rosa Parks with him surviving because he said that he is certain that had she not used her name, so to speak, to check on him and call the jail and let the jail know, hey, I got my eye on you, he is certain he probably would not have lived through the ordeal.
I think that's a testament to her character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a testament to her character, and she was very passionate about this. Right. And I was actually surprised when I heard the name of this group. I've never heard of it. It sounded like it was similar to the Black Panther Party. So I'm not sure if they were nationally known or recognized, or if this was something that was more local, but it definitely did remind me of the Black Panther Party.
Which I'm going to go do some research because it was a new organization to me as well. And I put a star next to it because I got to go Google and do some research myself because I'm not very familiar with this organization either. But it seems very similar to the Black Panther Party and like that. Yeah.
Right.
But this was something I didn't know. I had no clue about any of this. I knew nothing about this.
Not at all. Not at all. Nothing. I literally thought he just sat on the bus.
Right.
I mean, I knew she was part of the NAACP. I didn't know that much. But I didn't know, because I knew it was very strategic, right, of her sitting on that day. So I knew that there was, but I didn't know how involved she was pre that incident and post that incident.
Built off of Garveyism. You know what, L. Nixon? I actually want to do more research on Marcus Garvey. We were talking about this on my channel a few weeks ago, that I would love to see Marcus Garvey's story get like maybe the Spike Lee treatment, or, because as a child growing up, I was led to believe certain things about Marcus Garvey and Garveyism. But as an adult and knowing what I know now, I look at it differently. And so now I feel like I need to go back and read some books with the mindset that I have now that I didn't have as a child. And I would love to see like a serious treatment, because they have you believe, oh, he was a crook and he stole the money and he was doing this and doing that. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's how it went down. Now that I'm older, no, I don't think that's how it went down. You know what I'm saying? So L. Nixon, you're right. And Marcus Garvey is definitely somebody that is on my list that I need to do more research for myself. And like, not going to internet research. Like, I need to go get some books and read some books and stuff. You know what I mean? But you're right. That idea of reparations and even going back to Africa, that mindset.
But you know what? It's funny that we brought that up, because in this documentary, it opened up my eyes to two different terms. And I really thought there was just one type of person that would lead, that were leaders in the civil rights movement, and I thought that the title is just called an activist, right? But they were also placing a title on other people who are a little bit more radical in their approach as revolutionists. And I wonder if that's what Marcus Garvey is considered, a revolutionist, because I don't know. But it's something to think about, and I would like to read.
I think he probably would be considered. He definitely was considered radical. And he definitely scared the hell out of white people. And that's why I look back now on his story and I don't believe the rhetoric of what we've been sold that Marcus Garvey was. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay, so hold on. Let me go through my nails, child. My notes. Okay, so then we go back to 1931. So that's why I was like, why do we jump to 1971 just to go back to 1931? But okay. She got married, and that's when she became the secretary of the NAACP. Child, she went to her first meeting. They asked her to take notes, and she was the secretary.
Hey, it was meant to be from the start. You hear me?
Right. Exactly. They described the NAACP during that time period. It was not the juggernaut that it became in the 1960s. It was a very small operation. It did not have a lot of members, especially deep in the South. It didn't have a lot of members. And they said, generally speaking, the people who were very active would be the middle class, the black middle class. And there was a lot of elitism involved in who was going to be in charge and what they decided to do. But one A.D. Nixon, who ended up becoming president, was one thing I noticed that he was very dark skinned. And when we talk about colorism, when you think about the black middle class and the fact that this dark skin, he was very tall, that he came in to become president, and she was his secretary, and he decided he was going to shake some stuff up, right? He was going to shake some stuff up. They wanted to come through and attack the Voters League. And Rosa Parks talked about her registering to vote and how she ended up having to do it twice, because the first time she passed the test, but they didn't send her card. And so she had to go do it again. And the second time she said she took notes so that she would have proof that she had done it, but they sent her card the second time.
And that's the part that I was talking about that kind of like disappointed me, because I'm telling you, that whole voter registration thing and how we as a people are so lax with it. Just, I mean,
we take it for granted. Yeah.
Completely take it for granted. And people literally died and were brutalized for trying to vote, just to cast a ballot.
Yeah, died. Like you literally were putting your life on the line to just show up to register to vote.
Register.
Not even voting.
No, just to register.
And now you can vote online. You don't even have to leave your house. And we still can't get people to do it. But you're right. You're right. And she talked about that was the first time that she felt threatened. As far as, I think she said that was the first time she got kicked off the bus or something, was when she was leaving from registering to vote.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think I remember saying, yeah.
Yeah.
In the movie that they did that starred Angela Davis, they showed her getting kicked off the bus before the day she decided to sit down on the bus, but it was a different circumstance. It was just her on the bus coming home from work, and the bus driver, something happened, and the bus driver ended up putting her off the bus, and I don't remember what it was now because I saw the movie so long ago, but I remember that wasn't the first time in the movie either. But she said this was the first time she had been put off the bus.
Right.
I'm glad that the documentary highlighted the Women's League for Political Action, which was in Montgomery, because they absolutely were the backbone to the Montgomery bus boycott. Had it not been for them and their organization, that boycott wouldn't have lasted one day. Okay. The boycott lasted as long as it was organized, because they had been planning. Because again, contrary to popular belief, the boycott was not spontaneous. It wasn't supposed to necessarily be that day, but they were planning for action. They were planning for something, and they knew they wanted to find a way to challenge the system of Jim Crow. So the Women's League for Political Action had already had certain things in place. They already knew they had their phone tree in place, because back then wasn't no cell phones and internet and all of that. You had to call people to go knock on their door, because everybody didn't have a phone either. So they had a phone tree organized already. They already knew who was going to cook what and how meals were going to be delivered. They knew they had saved money to get people out of jail. They already had the taxi service set up. So when they did put the boycott in place, they had a service set up so people could still get to work and get where they needed to go every day. And it was very organized, but again, by Black women.
Yeah, I was about to say, is any of this surprising? It's by the Black women. Like I'm not going to get into gender roles and all this foolishness, but it's not surprising at all. When they decided they were going to do the bus boycott, they already typed up everything that needed to be sent to the kids to go home and tell their parents. It was like they all got text messages.
Right. And listen, and I remember, and I was sitting there when I'm watching it thinking, we can't even get these kids to take home their daggone credit card. I mean, their report cards. That's a note. It said, make sure It'd be at the bottom of their book bags, child.
Right, right. So what Nixon has here, what you have highlighted, is so true. You literally could just keep it up the rest of the documentary.
I know, right? That's why I had it up there. L. Nixon on it. So, now this is a story. Before we get to the boycott, we kind of got ahead of ourselves. But before we, because I'm going through my notes, child, because
it's okay.
But the documentary went back and forth and back and forth. So, but in one of the things that Rosa Parks was in charge of when she was with the NAACP, when she first joined, she was an investigator. And part of her job was to go out and investigate cases that involved Black women being violated. Now, y'all know I have to be strategic in my language, but y'all know what I mean. Black women who have been violated, because of course we know that the local police departments weren't going to do anything. They weren't going to do anything about it. So in 1944, there was a case of Reese Taylor. Now I became familiar with this case a few years ago. I took a class at Duke University, and it was dealing with the grassroots movement of the civil rights, the grassroots movement of the civil rights era, excuse me. And there was a book written by a Danielle, oh gosh, her name is, I don't see her face right now. It started off as her dissertation and it became a book about Reese Taylor and the case of Reese Taylor. And that was the first time that I found out. Well, I didn't know about Reese Taylor, and I didn't know about Rosa Parks' involvement with Reese Taylor. And the documentary still doesn't go as deep as the story goes with Rosa Parks' involvement with Reese Taylor. But Reese Taylor was a young woman who, walking home from church, she was kidnapped at gunpoint by a group of white men, and she was violated by all 6 of them. She was very brave because, of course, they told her, if you go to the police, we're going to kill you. She went to the police anyway, which, of course, didn't really do any good.
She probably already felt dead. Like, what's worse than this?
Exactly. So some people reached out to the NAACP and they sent Rosa Parks to go get her statement and get the information. Because again, remember, that was her job as an investigator. The part that they didn't tell in the documentary was that while she was there, they did talk about how the sheriff would drive by the house to intimidate them. But what the story they did not tell was that the sheriff didn't just drive by. The sheriff actually walked up on them at the house and asked who Rosa Parks was. They said that she was an agitator, that she was there just trying to rile up the good Black people. And he physically threw Rosa Parks off the porch and told her if she comes back, he was going to kill her. That part they did not put in the documentary, but that was in the book. And again, that was documented through the eyewitnesses of Reese Taylor's family. The book is really good. There was also a documentary that was done that came on HBO a couple of years ago. Now, the family had some issues with the documentary, but y'all can Google that and look all that up. But the book, and I can't remember the name of the book, but it has her name and it has Reese Taylor's name in it. And the author's name, first name is Danielle. And I had the book around here somewhere because she autographed my copy because she came to talk to us.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was the best. Oh my gosh, that was the best class I think I've ever taken in my adult career, child. That class was, oh my gosh. I met so many people from the civil rights era, like icons, like people I've read about in books. And I was like, oh my gosh.
You were fanning out, weren't you?
I absolutely, I was.
Aren't you like AP history or something? Oh, isn't that what you teach?
Huh?
Don't you teach like AP history?
Yeah, I teach AP US history.
Yeah, I know you were fanning out.
Girl, yes, I was definitely fanning out. I was. Hassan Jeffries was there. He gave a lecture. And he's actually the twin brother to Jeffries, the one who's the head of the Congress now, the minority leader of Congress, Jeffries. Oh God, what's his brother's name? Golly, Y'all know who I'm talking about. Put it in the chat, somebody. Please, 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 please. At the Dark End of the Street. Thank you, Tracy. Y'all know Tracy be on it. It's called At the Dark End of the Street. And that's if you want to go back and read the book on Reese Taylor. So it's called At the Dark End of the Street. But it was just some great people there. Like I met some icons. And I'm still really cool with. I've kept in touch because you know me. I've kept in touch with some of them. So yeah, Tracy, that's the name of the book. It's called The Dark End of the Street. Yep. And ultimately, she never did get any justice. But it's a long story to what happened with Reese Taylor. Hakeem Jeffries, thank you. Hakeem Jeffries, who is the minority leader in Congress, the first Black man to ever hold that title. His twin brother is a professor at Ohio University. He went to Morehouse. He's a historian, and he was one of the lecturers there because he wrote a book for his dissertation that dealt with the Freedom Summer. So
okay,
he signed my book too. Wait a minute. Hold on. Janae. Hold on. L Love, hold on. Give me a second. I'm sorry, y'all. Give me a second. I don't know how to. I'm sorry. L Love, I'm sorry. It was an accident. Let me get you. L Love was accidentally blocked, y'all. I'm sorry. Y'all know that's my boo right there, L Love. Y'all know I love my L Love now. All right. Hold on. Let me get her unblocked, y'all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What in the world? Okay. L Love, you should be good. I don't know what happened. I'm sure it was an accident. So my apologies, babe. My apologies. Let me see. Because you didn't even say nothing. I think I know what might have happened. All right, y'all. L Love, you're good, and I hope you're still here. I apologize. It looks like you were accidentally hidden.
Hey, Ella.
You're good now. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. Okay. Oh, Danny to put the whole book plus the link down to the
Oh, thanks, Danny.
down to the Amazon, child. Nope. Yeah, L Love. It was. I think I know what happened. Hold on, because I think. Well, not hold on. I think I know what happened. You were blocked by my niece, and I know she didn't do it on purpose. I think she probably done fell asleep. If I know my niece, she sleep, so she probably hit it by accident. So I apologize, because she don't be blocking people. Okay. So that was what happened with that, and so hold on. Let me get to my notes, child. Let me finish looking at my notes. Okay. 19. Then they jumped back to 1974. So they went from 1944 to 1974, and they tell the story of Joan Little. Now, I knew the story of Joan Little, but I did not know that Rosa Parks was involved in what happened with Joan Little. Now, Joan Little was a Black woman who was in jail. Don't matter why she was in jail. But one of the guards there went into her cell to attempt to violate her. And she unalived him. He did not live to tell the story. And so she was being put on trial. She was being put on trial for that, for the murder. And Rosa Parks was involved in organizing protests and organizing letter writing campaigns and everything to get her off of those charges.
Right.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, her big thing was just like, right. She was very, what is the word? Like, she was very consistent very consistent. Like when it came to
Yeah.
the other gentleman who was in jail, she would always check up on him every week. She was really good about letters. She was very diligent. She would just kind of see everything through. She really was kind of like the puppet, the strings or the the strings in the background that's just kind of like engineering everything. I'm telling you, I was really impressed. This was a very eye-opening documentary for me. I just thought she was a courageous, bold woman who sat on the bus and who was a member of the NAACP. And that was it. That was all. So yeah, that was definitely eye-opening as well. And that was what, in the 70s? I believe it was the 70s. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. That was my niece calling me. She apologized, LL. She didn't mean to block you.
Okay.
She said, I heard my name. What happened? I said, yeah. So she apologized. She didn't mean to do it. All right. Yeah. Everything you did, all of the above. I was listening. I was doing double duty. But the good news is that Joan Little was acquitted. So it worked. She was acquitted. And she was the first Black woman to get off on a charge like that. While she was in jail, for something like that. So I don't know why she originally was in jail, don't matter, but she was not, she was acquitted of that crime. Aww. And she should have been. So yeah. So then it jumped back to 1954, and we're finally at the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, what I did not know, that Rosa Parks had started a youth group at the church. She started a youth group down to the church, where she worked with the young girls through the NAACP, not just the girls, but the young folk through the NAACP, working with them on, knowing their rights and being prideful and having pride about themselves or what have you. And that's going to be important because Claudette Colvin was a member of her youth group. Now, a lot of people, if you don't know who Claudette Colvin is, Claudette Colvin was a young girl who actually had sat down on the bus a few weeks before Rosa Parks. Ultimately, the NAACP decided not to use her case as a test case for a variety of reasons. A lot of people like to say, "Oh, it's because she was dark skinned and they didn't want to do it because of colorism." That was an element, but that really wasn't the main element. The main element were three things. One, she was 15, and they felt like that was too much pressure to put on a 15-year-old, knowing all the things that would probably have happened by them filing, her filing a lawsuit against being the case, right? Oh, thank you, L Love. Hold on, let me check my Cash App. L Love says she sent me a little love. Thank you. Thank you for the Cash App, L Love. I appreciate you. She was 15, so that was the first thing. The second thing was I'm just gonna go ahead and be honest, she had a bad reputation. She was seen as a delinquent. They called her a runaway. She had some other run-ins. And so she wasn't the best candidate. And the third thing was she was pregnant. And
see, I didn't know all that. Now that wasn't in the documentary. Go ahead, really.
It wasn't in the documentary. Nope, it wasn't. And so, the reality is, I think, and this is why I tell people that I hate when people just go to colorism. Oh, it's because she was dark skinned. No, there were other things. Now, was colorism a part of it? Sure, I'm sure it was. I'm not gonna sit here. I just talked to you guys before about colorism being an issue with Nixon becoming the head of the head of the NAACP. And exactly, Duchess, when you're doing a test case, you need somebody who's spotless, because if not, what they're going to do is they're going to attack everything else, and it's going to take away. It's going to take away from, look at what they do to our Black men. Whenever there's an incident, the first thing they do is tear them down as people. They did it with George Floyd. We had to hear about all of his prior criminal history. They did it. Hell, they did it with Trayvon Martin. What did they do? They posted the picture of him smoking weed. Oh, he had been suspended from school. Again, I don't care. None of that matters, but we get distracted. And I say we, I'm saying as a society, we get distracted with all of those side things. And so, yes, the person who had to be, they had to be perfect. You know, they had to be perfect. And so I think it's a cop-out for people to say, oh, they didn't pick Claudette because she was dark-skinned. That's a cop-out. There were other issues that were there.
Absolutely.
But the other part the part I did not know, because see, this is the part of the story that people don't tell. They ended up filing a civil lawsuit against the city of Montgomery, and Claudette Colvin was a part of the civil lawsuit.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that because nobody ever tells you that part of the story. Nobody ever says, well, she was a part of the civil lawsuit that actually went to the Supreme Court. That actually was the reason why the buses were desegregated.
But wait, Rosa Parks wasn't part of the civil lawsuit.
And she wasn't. And
that is crazy. Yeah, that's what I was like, what? Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's the thing. I'm like, again, you know, and that's why I do like stuff like this, because you get more of the story and you understand. Because I think it's a cop-out for us to always make everything about colorism. And colorism exists. It's real. I'm never going to say it doesn't. But in this case, there was more to the story. There was more to the story. But Claudette Colvin, so Rosa Parks actually knew Claudette Colvin through her youth organization. So again, that connection was sort of there.
Right.
So again, this wasn't some stranger. They knew her. And I think that's another reason why they decided not to use her, because they knew her. This wasn't some stranger. It was like, nah, we can't use her because
right.
We know she be cutting up, you know.
Right.
Fred Gray was the lawyer. Okay. They talked about her working with a white family, a white couple who they also wanted integration, Virginia and her husband Dern, and they sent her to a program called the Highlander program, which still exists today.
Really?
Which is like a didn't you see in the documentary it was a black lady with an afro, and then she was sitting next to a white guy.
Yes.
The Highlander, their job description was like the Highlander programs or something like that. So yes, I said, oh, this program still exists. I'm sure in a different capacity, probably more, with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything like that. But yeah, it still exists. Right. And it may be a rebirth of it. It may not have existed all these years, but maybe they started it back up, you know.
Right. So yeah, that was an eye-opening experience for Rosa Parks. So in the Highlander program, you know, they were all getting their education, but it was integrated. Actually, it wasn't an education. It was a workshop. It was a workshop that they would attend. And it was integrated, and it almost sounded like she was shell shocked, like when she first got there, because they said she was so quiet in the beginning. She's never seen Black people and white people get along so well, and everything was fair at this workshop. And I don't know. I guess it was an overnight stay. All of those things, you know. It was a time to fellowship. It wasn't just like a one-day workshop or something. It was over a period of time, maybe a few days or a week or whatever have you. But yeah, they not only did they learn, but there was also, you know, dancing and fun activities, things of that sort. And they said that she was invited as a guest. And for some time, she was pretty quiet. And then she kind of opened up towards the end because she was just shocked. Yeah. And then later on, she said if it wasn't for that, she said that she hated she realized you didn't have to hate white people. And because of that experience.
You realize I hated white people.
Right. I thought that was shocking when she said at that speech. She was like, I've learned that you didn't have to hate white people after I visited Highlander. I was like, oh, that time you hated white people? I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. All that time you hated white people. Right, and so again, it goes back to her mindset saying, I never wanted integration. Like, I never wanted to be around them. I was cool on my side of the world. I just wanted them to stop treating us bad. She was like, I just wanted them to stop treating us bad. I didn't care about having to go to a separate school, a separate restaurant. I just wanted them to stop treating me bad. Which is definitely interesting.
But what did that moment remind you of, though?
Huh?
What did that moment remind you of? Like, which activist and where did he go? And then it reminded you of that eye-opening experience for him as well.
Oh, Malcolm X, when he went on his pilgrimage to Mexico.
Yeah.
Definitely he changed his idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was his attitude before he went to Mecca. Like, I don't have no use for white people at all.
It sounds funny, but yeah.
So in the city of Montgomery, there were no black bus drivers, and all of the bus drivers were armed. And that also made a difference when you start talking about why didn't they just say no, we ain't gonna get up off the bus? Because all of the bus drivers had weapons, and you knew that nothing was gonna happen to the bus driver if you decided he was gonna break the law. Nothing was gonna happen to the bus. Because remember, that was the law at the time. It may have been an unfair law, but it was law at the time. Okay. Mm-hmm. She said, what I thought was funny was she said, at no point in time did she ever say her feet were tired. She just said, I don't think I should have to get up.
It's just that simple.
Right. Because, the story was always told to me, oh, her feet were tired. She said, in all of the interviews that I gave, I never said that. She said, I told the bus driver, he told me to get up. He said, make it easy on yourself. You need to go ahead and get up. And she said, I'm not getting up. And he said, why are you not going to get up? She said, because I don't think I should have to.
Right. It's just that simple.
Right. It's just that simple. I don't think I should have to. Okay.
But that's what we were taught ever since like kindergarten and the story of Rosa Parks.
I was always taught that. I was taught that too. I was like, she said her feet were tired. She said, I ain't never said that. It's funny, but it's not funny. She said, I ain't never said that. Stop putting that on me. I said no. I said I'm not getting up because I don't think I should have to.
No, she basically said this is some BS. That's what she said.
Exactly right. She said,
and not today's
y'all did that to make yourselves. Y'all did that to make yourselves feel better. I never said that.
Right.
Okay, so we kind of already went through the organization of the Women's Council and all of that stuff. I just wrote that in my notes. We already talked about the fact that there was Rosa Parks' court case, but then there was also a class action lawsuit that was filed against the city of Montgomery. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and she won her case. She won. I mean, well, sorry, that wasn't her. We just said that part. But the Supreme Court said, you're right. The law is unconstitutional, and that is what ultimately integrated the buses. And here's where it kind of starts going downhill, I guess. The consequences: she lost her job. Her husband actually ended up quitting his job in protest because he was a barber on the Army base, and they wouldn't allow them to talk about what was going on with the boycott. And so he was like, you ain't gonna sit here and tell me I can't talk about my own wife. So I quit,
Right.
I don't think it occurred to him that he wouldn't be able to find a job cutting hair, and they were unemployed while Martin Luther King got all of the accolades. They said that she would be invited to come and speak, but he was invited to be a part of the organizations, and he was invited to, be on the news and be interviewed, and he got all of the attention when he really ain't do shit.
Right.
There's no disrespect, but she was the one that put everything on the line. Now, don't get me wrong, his house was bombed. Nixon's house was bombed. They suffered consequences, but she was the one that put herself on the line, I should say.
Right.
She ended up having to leave Montgomery for her own safety because she was getting death threats. She said their phone was ringing all night long off the hook, and they were being threatened. So she had a brother who lived in Detroit, and that's how she actually moved to Detroit. And she said that's when she learned about Northern segregation. Like, it wasn't just a Southern thing. She realized, oh, wait a minute, the North got their ish too. Because again, people will have you believe that all the problems were in the South and that the North, everything was perfect. And that was not the case. In the North, it was more institutionalized, and it was less in your face. Like, it wasn't signs up necessarily that might say blacks only, but you knew you weren't allowed. You knew you weren't welcome, certain neighborhoods and stuff like that. And so her nor her husband could find jobs either. And they were, like you said, they were destitute. Like, they literally were poor. Their tax returns, I think they said their tax returns for 1956 or 1957, excuse me, was $600 for the year.
For the year, yeah.
For the year. And they said that she was so humble that she would never tell people if she were hungry. She would never tell people that she needed anything. They just figured it out. They just did what they had to do. They made do with what they could. I said an article ran in Jet magazine in 1950. In 1960, I didn't write the year down, but it was like 1958, 1959. An article ran in Jet magazine, and it was about like revisiting the people from the Montgomery bus boycott. And when people realized that Rosa Parks was basically living destitute, then she got a lot of donations. People started, sent them money and things like that. And then that was when she was actually able to get a job. Her and her husband were able to get jobs after that. But I think a lot of people didn't realize that. I think people maybe just assumed that they were living good, like everything was cool for them. Like,
Yeah, I mean, she was high profile. So for the Black community, there's two different Americas, but one would just assume that she was well off, and she presented, like I said, I thought she was just middle class the way that she presented herself.
I always thought she was. Like I said, I knew she lost her job, but I thought when they moved to Detroit, I thought they were good. I really did. I didn't know.
Right, and I think that that's how everybody pretty much carried it. But it is kind of shocking that no one intimately checked in to see how they were doing.
Right, people who were but again, that goes back to what they were saying, that even after the Montgomery bus boycott, nobody even offered her a job. Like, none of those men, Martin Luther King included, none of those men offered her a job. None of those men said, listen, we're going to find something for you to do, even if it's not making a lot of money, even if it's not making, but we're going, and at the very least, they didn't even look out for her husband. At the very least, they didn't say, okay, we might not be able to do nothing for you, but we're going to make sure your husband can bring some food home.
Right.
It just seemed like they just forgot about her. They just let it be what it is. And so, again, it goes to the misogyny, but it also goes to the I'm gonna make sure I'm good.
Right.
Remember, these people weren't friends. Like, she wasn't friends with Martin Luther King before all of this happened. But still, you would think that somebody would be like, they good.
Right. She was an integral part of the movement.
Of the movement, yeah. But they never had any problem putting her out there when somebody wanted to hear her speak. But nobody looked out for her on the back end, and that's what I feel like was real effed up.
Because they said during that time she would still go to meetings and stuff. I was like, wow, that's woman.
She never stopped going to meetings. She was always active. If anybody asked her, she was there. If they asked her to come and show up, she was there. In 1963, perfect example, the March on Washington. They said that women, again, were not allowed. I mean, were not a major part of the March on Washington. When you look at the speakers of that day, I think there were only 2 women that spoke. Daisy Bates spoke. Lena Horne said 2 words. I think they said that Lena Horne was able to say 2 words. And did Rosa Parks speak, or did they just let her be there, let her be seen?
Yeah, they just let her be seen. They just introduced her, and then she stood up and moved. Yeah.
And they said that Lena Horne was the one that took her around to all of the different to Lena Horne took her around to all of the different foreign press for her to be interviewed, for her to be able to talk to the press, because none of the men that organized the march really gave a damn. Like, she was there as, to be like, oh, there's Rosa Parks, but she was not a part of the day in an intricate way.
That's Black girl magic right there.
Right,
because right, because she would get in front of the cameras and she was like, "Do y'all know who this is? This is, this is Rosa Parks." She would really affirm who this woman was and how big of a deal she was. So yeah, and she just kept taking it around to the different media outlets and the press. So
exactly.
I love that.
They said that the total opposite of Malcolm X. They said Malcolm X absolutely loved Rosa Parks, and every time he was in Detroit, he made it his business to go and see her and talk to her, and that he absolutely adored her. And that he actually went to go see her a couple of weeks before he was killed. But they said that Malcolm X absolutely understood and respected, and that she loved and respected him, because, again, remember, she was not she did not support integration, and she was not nonviolent. So that was right up Malcolm X's alley,
Right.
So they definitely had a they didn't say they had like a close relationship, but he loved, whenever he was in Detroit, he always made sure that he went to visit her, and he definitely respected who she was to the movement, to the civil rights movement.
Right. I mean, there's two ways to skin a cat, peacefully or we come out guns blazing. So, she just respected both sides. Like, she understood both sides, and it sounds like she was more leaning towards Malcolm's side, to be honest. But
right. Oh, definitely. And even though I don't think because she wasn't that type of person to publicly say anything, she might have had some feelings about how she was treated. I mean, she would never have publicly said it, but maybe amongst her husband or behind closed doors, she may have had some feelings about Martin Luther King and the way things went down. Who knows? I don't think she was a nasty person, but you can't help but think that she might have sometimes been like, look at me and look at him, and he was a nobody. Because remember, Martin Luther King, nobody knew who Martin Luther King was. That was he had just become the pastor of that church. He had just gotten married, and like, he was like, the matter of fact, the way he became the spokesperson for the Montgomery bus boycott is because he was low man on the totem pole, and none of the other established pastors wanted to put their churches or their lives or their families in jeopardy. So they were like, you do it.
Right.
That's how he even got in that position. Not because he was something, it's because they were like, you low man on the totem pole. You can go, you go out there and do it. You put yourself on the line. We ain't gonna do it.
Right.
1967, the Detroit race riots happened. Over 50 Black men were killed. There was a incident that happened at the hotel. It was a movie about this a few years ago. I think one of the members of the band of one of the was it the Dells at the time was killed. And because there was a blackout on the information, they had a local tribunal. Like, they had a tribunal where they basically tried the cops, and they asked Rosa Parks to be a part of it, and they didn't think she would do it because it was really just something for the Black community to sort of make them feel better. Like, there was no, there was nothing you could do. It's the matter of just them going through the evidence and presenting it to the community, because nothing was being said in the press about it. So it was them giving the community the information, and then they sort of had a jury, like a tribunal, to decide whether these men were guilty or innocent. And they asked Rosa Parks would she be a part of it, and she didn't hesitate. She was like, I would love to. Like, absolutely, I would love to be a part of this. And they were shocked by that, because they were like, wow, Rosa Parks is going to come and hang out with us, Again, these were revolutionaries, this was in the late 60s. So again, we're talking about that whole radical revolutionary mindset of like the Panthers and stuff like that. They really didn't think that she would, but she was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And they said she showed up, and they found them guilty. They found the cops guilty. So, right. So shortly after that, a man by the name of John Conyers was running for Congress. And Rosa Parks worked on his campaign. She spoke for him. She campaigned for him. Was very active. And he actually won. He became one of the first Black men in Congress. He won, and he gave her a job in his office. And that was the first job she ever had in politics.
Right. And I thought that was awesome. You could tell that it sounded like he was just so honored to have her work for him in any kind of capacity. So, yeah, the people definitely look out for her in the end. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he even told her, he was like, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you open the mail. I don't care if you answer the phones. He was like, just to have you on my staff, because of how much respect he had for her. And a lot of people tried to get in her ear and say, oh, he's just using you. He's just putting you, you're being used as a pawn. And she was like, no, he's not. Like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. Right.
1968, Martin Luther King was arrested. She was at the funeral. They shared pictures of her. She sat in the front row with Coretta Scott King and everything. She was there. 1971, her husband died, and her husband and her brother and her mother all died from cancer. And she became their caretaker. So she had to sort of cut her hours down to part-time because she was taking care of them. 1985, and I hope my niece is still in the room, because Dearborn, which is a suburb outside of Detroit, there was a boycott in 1985, where there was an incident at a park where there was a Black family at the park trying to have a little, picnic, cookout, whatever. And a white family ran them off and said, you can't stay here. You can't, you don't live in Dearborn. You can't use the park. And it was a court case. And they decided, Rosa Parks said, okay, well, listen, if they don't want us in their parks, then we're going to boycott the whole city. And so Black folk from Detroit were boycotting the whole city of Dearborn or neighborhood suburb of Dearborn, state, because they passed a law. But I'm sorry, the city council of Dearborn passed a law stating that unless you lived in Dearborn, you couldn't be at the public park. And they filed a lawsuit against the city council and against the suburb of Dearborn. But in the meantime, they boycotted. And the fact that she suggested it and they went through with it, and they said the boycott was very effective and the law eventually was overturned. So again, it was sort of a bookmark, right? 1985, she's right back where she started using that same tactic.
Yeah, she was doing a mini boycott, and it still worked.
And it still worked. And her and John Conyers ran for president and vice president of the NAACP. They were defeated. And of course, again, the old boys club came through and they were like, oh, he's just using you as a figurehead. And that old woman, she's too old to do this job. He said in the meantime, there were men who were running for the position who were just as old as she was and could barely walk up the stairs. And once again, it's that sexism came into play. So they were defeated. Oh, thank you so much, L Love, everybody in the chat.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're almost done because as you can tell, we get closer and closer. 1984. I remember this incident happened in 1984. A man broke into her house and to rob her and beat her.
Why do I vaguely remember that? I just remember, I don't know. I'm not that old, but but I remember a little something.
I remember it because once again, people were shocked to find out that she was basically living not in poverty, but she wasn't some rich woman being taken care of, living high on the hill.
Right.
They were like, why is she even by herself? At that point, I think she was in her 80s. And they were like, why is she even living? Why was she by herself?
Just watching Rosa Parks.
Right. Why was she even by herself? But, the young man, he beat her. And she said she forgave him, just told him don't do it again. Why are you out here robbing people? What do you need? I'm like, that's a little too nice for me. But okay.
Who is watching Rosa Parks? That should be the name of the next one.
Right. Okay. She started an institute with a partner, sort of similar to her youth group that she had in the 1950s. It was an institute for self-development for young people. And it was it was like a wellness center where you could go and, again, get certain things and resources and things of that nature. Mind you, this woman was like in her 80s, y'all. Okay. In 1990, when Nelson Mandela came to Detroit, he came to Detroit, and again, Rosa Parks, they said she was sort of an afterthought. She was one of the last people that they invited to meet. They were at Tiger Stadium, and there was a long row of dignitaries, and she was at the end of the row because she was the last one that they invited to come. And they said Nelson Mandela saw her, and he walked past everybody else to get to her, and he hugged her so tight, he lifted her off of her feet, and he was so happy to see her, and then he, has so much, once again, so much respect for her, and for who she was, and they said that, the rest of the people was in line with their little feelings hurt, like, wait a minute, what?
Right.
Unfortunately, though, in 2005, Rosa Parks did pass away. However, she was the first Black woman, only the second Black person to ever sit for public viewing in the Capitol Rotunda. I actually went and walked past her casket while she was there. I did. Her body.
I thought I saw you in the clip. Just kidding.
You saw me. That was me, girl. That was me. Her body was first flown to Montgomery, Alabama, where they had a ceremony for her there, and then flown to the Capitol Rotunda. And then Miss Sharon, you went past her coffin too. And then I saw you there too, girl. And then was flown back to Detroit, where she had her final resting place.
They said in DC it was 40,000 people.
Yeah. Oh, the line was crazy. I went after work. It was crazy. Like,
wow.
You just had and it was one of those things where you just stood out there, you talked to people in front of you, talked to people behind you. Hey, girl. It was very reverent. I mean, it wasn't like people partying. It was very reverent and respectful. Right. But, people was tough. What could you do? You just
right.
Yeah, me and some of my coworkers went after work. So in 2013, I did not know this. In 2013, she actually has a statue in the Capitol Rotunda, which I did not know. So that was unveiled in 2013.
I don't remember seeing it. I was just there, actually.
I didn't know it was. I didn't even know it was there. So so of course I learned some things as well. So what was the biggest thing that you learned? First of all, it's highly recommended. It's on Peacock, you guys. It is called, anybody, in case you came in late, it's called The Rebellious Life of Miss Rosa Parks. It is also a book, and they also have a children's companion to it. So if you have children, not an S on that word. If you have children, go get the book. You get the book for yourself, read it, and then buy the youth companion to the book, and you can sit down and talk to your kids about Rosa Parks. So very, very good resource. Very good resource. So what was the biggest thing that sort of like shocked you the most, Peace?
That shocked me the most? I mean, honestly, the whole story. Like I said, I just looked at her as this little old lady who just sat on the bus and didn't want to move her from her seat because she was tired. And that was not. She was just so much more, and she really was an activist. It wasn't just this one moment in time. She was an activist. She dedicated her entire life to this, and it was all the way up until her death. She was still helping people out, still helping with civil rights. She had, like Really B said, she just had this mini boycott over this park, So she was still pumping the fist and like, let's do this, So I thought the whole story was amazing. One thing that they definitely did leave out was that she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is the sorority that I'm part of. So she's my sorority sister, and
I was gonna bring that up, but I didn't. I was actually gonna bring that up. That she is your soror.
Yes. So that's definitely the cherry on top. She was just amazing, just so bold, and just to be so tiny, and she just carried a big stick, even though she was so small, and just so well poised. And I mean, she's just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and she talked about that as well. She has so many awards and plaques and degrees and honorary degrees, and she said more than she could count. She talked about all of her awards and accolades and things of that nature. Something I was gonna say. Before I get off of here too, this story is not an anomaly. I think a lot of people. You see my niece in the chat.
Yes, I do. I'm saying hi to her right now.
That's what I was. I think I said that to you one time before. I said you and my niece got something in common. But again, I'm careful about putting people's business out there.
All right.
The same thing happened with Coretta Scott King. I remember Oprah Winfrey bought her a condo because she found out how Coretta Scott King was living, and she was like, "There's no reason in the world why the widow of Martin Luther King should be living the way." And I mean, she wasn't living in poverty, but I can't remember, but remember at one point in time it came out that she was behind on her mortgage or something was going on with her, and she didn't have the money. And Oprah, this was years ago. This was probably, because this was maybe about 10 years before she died. So this was years ago. But I remember Oprah was like, "There's no reason in the world why the widow of Martin Luther King should have to worry about a bill and worry about not, you know what I mean?" Like she was like, and she ended up buying her a condo or something like that down in Atlanta. And I was like, I know that's right, Oprah. You better.
That's kind of like how Tyler Perry moves. That's how he is.
Yeah. Very much so.
Can I take advantage of my mod privileges and put my link in the chat?
Absolutely. And I have it pinned. Your link is pinned, so your link has been pinned. At the top.
Okay.
No. You can drop it again.
Okay.
Again, if you guys came in late or you're catching this in the replay, my co-host tonight is Peace, Love, and Netflix. She has a YouTube channel where basically it's in the name. She reviews shows that are over on the Netflix channel every Wednesday night. She also does self-love and
self-care.
Self-care and self-love. She does little quick videos sometimes about just breathing and taking some time out for you and different things like that. So you guys go over there and y'all check out my girl P. She's a mod over here, but she definitely has her own channel. L. Nixon, are you active on your channel? You still active on your channel? I know you kind of took a break for a minute.
From what I know personally, he's definitely taking a break for a little bit. So
okay, that's what I was gonna say it, but I didn't want to say it. But but thank you, L. Nixon, you for being in the chat, and your commentary has been very, very insightful. You've been dropping some gems. Thank you, L. Love. You've been dropping some gems. I saw Duchess here earlier. Duchess has a channel too, right?
No, she just posts. No, she doesn't have it.
I mean, get everybody. I'm just trying to get everybody. Thank
you, Danny J. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to get out of here, you guys. But thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you again, Peace, for doing this with me. You guys are going to keep getting your Black History facts. I know I owe y'all yesterday and today's. I have to be strategic about how I drop them, because when I record them on StreamYard and I play it from StreamYard, it plays like a live and it goes out it uses up my notification. So I have to be strategic, but you guys are gonna get them. You're gonna get 28 facts before the end of the month. You'll have all 28 of your facts, okay? Any other than that, any final words, Peace, before we get out of here?
Power to the people.
I know that's right. Listen, I told you guys that there's a book on Reese Taylor. There's a book to this documentary. You could go see the documentary on Reese Taylor, the documentary on Peacock for this. The documentary on Reese Taylor is on HBO. And I want to say, I feel like Oprah Winfrey was one of the producers, but don't quote me on that. But it was on HBO, and I'm sure you can find it on HBO Max. especially during the month of February. What's my Cash App? What's my Cash App, y'all?
Girl, before that,
hold on.
Really Be the Podcast.
Yeah, it's $ Really Be the Podcast. I'm sorry. I usually have my little ticker tape thing playing. I didn't run my ticker tape thing. I'm sorry. I got to do better at these things. Better.
You put me underneath the spot because you know I'm a mod. So I'm like, oh, what is it?
Right. Danny, I'm not gonna say no. Remind me. We could do one like later on in the month. Remind me. Okay. But let me get off of here, you guys. Thank y'all so much for being here. Mwah. I'll talk to y'all later.
Bye, everybody. Bye.